Hi everyone and welcome to the Slay with Shay platform. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And thanks to everyone that tuned into my last video. So today I wanted to talk about how I was able to pay off my debts. So one thing I want to put out there is that I still have my student loan debt. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I went through, probably up until only recently, kind of just saying to myself that I was debt free. And like kind of, basically kind of believing that I was debt free. And then I was like, wait, no, I've still got my student loan debt. They're still taking chunks of money out every month. So yeah, I'm technically not debt free because I still have my student finance debt, which gets taken out of my paycheck before I get my take home pay. So I'm still paying that off. And I've got quite a little bit to go, but almost there-ish. Still quite a chunk, but still almost there. So yeah, that's the next thing that I'm really focused on clearing as soon as possible, because seeing that amount that gets taken from my wage every month is painful. So yes, so I am not officially debt free in regards to my student debt. However, in regards to the money that I owed creditors, so my credit score video, I spoke about how, I had like multiple outstanding debts, etc. So all of those debts I was able to clear. So I currently only have my student debt at the moment, but I thought it'd be good to just maybe kind of have a quick chat about how I was able to do that and the kind of steps I took into trying to bring my debts down. One thing I want to really kind of say as well is that when it comes to kind of trying to pay off debt and trying to sort of improve your financial situation as a whole, there often isn't really a quick fix. I know that when you're like really heavily in it, you just wish that a large sum of money could just fall in your lap, or you wish that you could win the lottery tomorrow, etc. But if that sort of opportunity doesn't come, then you have to sort of accept that everything is gradual, and even if it takes longer than you might want. So sometimes, like, I've heard people say things like, oh, but it's going to take me 3 years to pay everything off. And it's like, yeah, but that 3 years is going to pass either way. So you might as well spend that time clearing that debt and, getting yourself to a place financially that you want to be, rather than kind of look at it as something that's very daunting. So for me, I kind of had to also adopt a similar mindset in kind of saying, right, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. And no matter how long it's going to take, that's what I'm going to kind of dedicate my efforts to. So the first thing I did, or should I say the first approach I took towards trying to pay my debts off, was actually acknowledging them. And this is because I buried my head in the sand for a long time. I really kind of went about life like I wasn't out here owing this company and that company money. I was really just living my life. And yes, I had moments where, of course, I was very down about being in debt, as you would be. But for the most part, I was living in somewhat denial. And yeah, so I kind of had to drag myself out of that kind of denial pit and literally put pen to paper and say, okay, this is how much I owe. These are how much my monthly payments are supposed to be for each of these creditors. How long is that going to take me to pay everything off once I calculate it? And how much money can I put towards it when I've done like my income and outgoings, etc. And then I said, all right, okay, how long do I actually want to pay this off for? Because let's say, for example, once I've calculated everything, it's going to take me 5 years to pay off, let's say. But I want to pay it in 2 or 3. So how much every month do I need to then be putting towards it to be able to do that? So that was the approach I took. I kind of had a time scale in mind that I wanted based on what I could afford. And I said, right, I'm going to just stick to making sure that I'm consistent with these payments. So for me, I was very determined to overpay. Let's say, for example, one of my debts, the normal payment would have been £100. I would want to pay 150, 200, whatever I could reasonably afford that wouldn't stretch me too much, but that I could afford to kind of go through periods of sacrifice for. That was what I did, because I was really determined to pay off my debt in a shorter time frame than I would have paid it off if I stuck to the original kind of arrangements that I had. So yeah, so for me, it was a real period of sacrifice. And sometimes that word is easier said than done, because a lot of us like to think that we're sacrificing in some way. Like you might say, okay, fine, I'm going to stop ordering from Deliveroo, but maybe you have something else that you are spending money on that you don't really need to. So you're not actually really saving the money there. You've just shifted it somewhere else. And I think everybody does this to an extent. But for me, it was like a real period of, okay, if I'm going to cut this out of my usual expenditure, then I'm not going to just then shift that to go and start spending it elsewhere. So I'm going to make sure that that extra money that I've saved from cutting out that particular habit or spend, whatever, I'm going to then put that towards the extra money I wanted to put towards paying off my debt. So for me, it was a real period of sacrifice. I stopped doing things that I really liked, whether that be going out or traveling, etc. I really had to just say, okay, throughout this time, I have to cut these things out. And I had to remind myself that these things are not, like they're not going anywhere, you know, as much as I might have wanted to travel during that time, or as much as I wanted to go to that bar during that time or whatever, these things are still going to be there when I've paid these debts off, and I'll be able to enjoy things a lot more knowing that I don't have that weight on my shoulders. So yeah, for me, it was a real period of sacrifice. I also started to think about the things that were in my life that were kind of taking up my expenses and what could I get rid of. So for me, the first thing I got rid of was my car. I had a car back then and I absolutely loved my car, even though I'm genuinely starting to think that that car was bad vibes, because if I tell you some of the stories with this car, but I really loved it. I loved obviously the ease of being able to get around, that sense of independence that I could go there, everywhere. So for me to give up my car, it was a big decision for me. And that's because my car was something that I knew from the very beginning of me having it that I couldn't really afford. But yet I still kind of, you know, wanted to really hold on to it, even though I knew it was holding me back financially. So yeah, when I was going through that period of trying to pay my debts off, the first thing that went was my car. And we may all have different things like that in our lives, whether it be, I don't know, like a subscription for something, or a hobby that we have, or something like that, where it's like you don't necessarily need it, but you really are attached to it, but you know it will save you a lot of money every month. Through that period of sacrifice, when you're trying to repay your debts, I genuinely think that it's best to explore the option of seeing what you can cut out. I'm not saying get rid of everything, because just because we're in debt doesn't mean that we shouldn't enjoy life, and it doesn't mean that we should live in a state of just unhappiness. No, still try and make sure that you're maintaining things that you enjoy, because if not, it will just affect your mental health and you'll just feel like your debt is consuming you. But if there are areas that you know aren't as of importance, that you can take away from your spending every month and put that towards your debts, 100% would recommend doing that. That really, really worked for me. Another really good thing to think about when you're trying to pay off your debt is trying to ensure that you put things in place to stop yourself from getting back into debt. So for me, for example, when I was clearing my overdraft debt, every time I made payments towards my overdraft, I cleared that balance down. So let's say, for example, my overdraft was £2,000, and one month I was able to make a £500 payment towards it. Rather than just leave that £500 available, I would reduce that balance by £500. So I was effectively, each time I was making payments, I was reducing my overdraft balance down. And for me, that really worked, because it's like that money isn't there for me to just kind of quickly try and dip back into. And the same thing with my credit cards. So when I was clearing credit card debt, I cut my credit cards up, shredded them, whatever, made sure I didn't have access to them at all. And every time I was making payments, it was clearing that balance each month, and I wasn't spending it again. So I would advise, if you have credit that you have access to try to find ways to stop you from getting back into debt, because there's nothing worse than working so hard to try and pay something off, and then you find yourself in a situation where you're back in it, and it's just a cycle of paying and then using it again, and then paying and then using it again. Another thing that helped me was earning more money. So I can't really try and find a way of kind of describing how to pay debts off without the fact that we need money to be able to do that. For me, I made sure that whenever I went for jobs and I was looking at the salaries, etc., I had already calculated in my head the salary that I needed to be able to sustain my day-to-day lifestyle, but also give me the extra chunks of money that I would need to pay towards my debts. So there were certain jobs I didn't even entertain it, because by the time I'd put the amount in salary calculator, I knew that was not going to be, it weren't going to cut it, basically. So I was quite strict during that period of when I was moving through jobs, of just making sure that the money that I was going to get would really, really help me in terms of getting extra money to be able to pay towards my debts and pay my debts off quicker. Back then I wasn't necessarily business savvy, so it didn't really always it didn't come to me to think, oh, let me think of a side hustle that can bring me extra money. But now we're in an era where people are so innovative and people are thinking of so many really, really good ways of earning extra money. So again, that's something that people can consider. If you're in debt and there's a way of you making extra money on the side, do it. Do whatever you can to try and bring that extra income in, because of course the more money that you can bring in, the more easier it would be to try and pay your debts off. You can still pay your debts off with the money that you earn, and you pay what's affordable for you. But if you are really trying to pay them off faster, then extra money will help you do that. So however way you can get that extra money, I would recommend looking into those options, as long as they're not illegal options though. Another thing that I think is really important when you are struggling with debt is to not blame yourself. I know that there is a thin line between taking responsibility for your actions and making an improvement towards it, and also kind of really blaming yourself and resenting yourself for maybe some financial mistakes that you have made in the past. I used to be one of those people, and I filled myself with so much resentment because I'd gotten to a place in life where I was a lot more financially literate, and I had so many ideas and so many things I wanted to do financially, and I couldn't because my previous mistakes were holding me back, either with my bad credit or with the fact that I was in debt, etc. And I just went through a period of resentment. And I was quite fortunate that I had really good people around me, etc. And I was able to kind of pull myself out of those thought processes. But it is so easy when you're struggling with debt to really get to a place of resentment and loneliness. And really, I just really want to encourage people that whatever season you're going through, do not blame yourself. Everything happens for a reason. Even things that we are like, why me? Everything has its purpose. And just think about what this season is trying to teach you. And when you come out the other side, when you have paid your debts off and you look back and you're like, wow, I really did that. Each month that you're making a dent in your debts, you'd be like, wow, I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. It's really going down. And I think rather than look behind as to where you've come from, look forward in terms of where you're going and look at everything that you've done to bring yourself to the place that you're in now. And that would really be my strongest recommendation, is to just make sure that you are looking after your mental health throughout that period, because I know how much it can really bring you down. So I would say the first thing to do is look after your well-being and make sure that you are not constantly blaming yourself for things that you cannot change. All you can change right now is what your attitude to money is like now and how you want it to be moving forward. And as long as you're taking steps to change that, that's all anyone can ask for. So that's pretty much kind of everything that I have done or did in regards to trying to pay my debts off. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you have gone through periods where you struggled with debt, let me know what your approaches were. We can all learn from one another. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.